explanations and inferences, I want you guys to make sure you are watching the videos, make sure that your peers are watching the lesson videos, not seeing that evidence. So that is concerning with the grades the way they are and the amount of students that want to do well in the class, yet they're not watching the video. So if your friends are asking you for help and you're one of the ones who watch videos, please do so and don't do the work for them. Have them watch the quick little video and get the lesson from me. Let them to give you this information so it is all accurate. Make sure they are getting it from me. A lot of this information is new. Some of it's information you already know, but we're applying it to. So I want to go over, we're going to talk about plausibility today. You guys will be working on guided enlightenment today. So you guys have the notes sent to you as a PDF file and also as a Word file, and you guys will just fill in the blanks as we go through the lesson. Hopefully only take about 10 minutes. And then you will then look at the assignment, which is right here. And so you have to read this little text, and then I'll talk to you guys in a minute about the assignment. So you should have all those items up so we can talk about it. Okay, let's go ahead and get started on our quick lesson. My screen is being rather slow this morning. I'm going to hit slideshow. Well, I'm going to pause the video for a minute and try to see if I can get my slideshow working. Give me just a moment. Okay, here we go. I think it's a little delayed. I think this video is going to be a little delayed too. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, so just a couple things. We will talk about plausibility. We've talked about that in class before. You can use the synonyms like possible, probable, credible, believable, likely, okay? Acceptable. So we're going to talk about plausible explanations today. And we're still working on the same learning objective. We're still trying to figure out if the explanations and the inferences are good to go, okay? If they're actually good explanations. And that's what you guys are going to work on today. So yesterday you guys worked on a little assignment where I wanted you guys to research the difference between freshwater and saltwater. And so in a way, if you were a scientist and you were doing something like that, you'd have to explain why freshwater tastes the way it does and saltwater tastes the way it does. And maybe they would have to do some measurements and explain it, like measuring the salinity and the amounts in different waters. And they'd have to explain it, right? What it means. And then also, not just scientists, but historians have to do the same. So when they research and they get documents and historical facts and information, they still have to explain why it happened, how it happened, what caused it to happen. And we're going to talk more historically today. So you guys have this in front of you. I'm going to read it. Hopefully I'm pronouncing the names right. I'm not a historian. So, okay, this is supposedly factual information. We're going to use it as such in our text, okay, to kind of get through today's lesson. So it says in October 333 BC, Alexander's Macedonian force confronted the Persian king Darius III and his army at, it looks like Issus. The Macedonians, though more disciplined than the Persians, were hugely outnumbered. Yet, surprisingly, in the furious encounter that followed, it was Darius's massive force that fled in defeat, leaving Alexander victorious. So we're going to talk about explanations for this to be so. Why did this huge army leave this little army? What are the possible explanations? And obviously it was strange and it was unexpected because it says so. It says, yet surprisingly. So it obviously was shocking. So I want you guys to be thinking on your paper, what are some possible explanations for this? What could have allowed this to happen? You guys can pause the video and make a list of possibilities, and maybe we have some of the same. All right, so hopefully you guys paused the video and made a little list. Here's my list. Maybe the Macedonians had better tactics or had better weapons. Maybe Alexander was a more inspiring leader than Darius III. maybe the smaller Macedonian army was easier to command because they're smaller. You could, get information spread more quickly. They're more mobile. They could make quick changes and plans. Maybe the Persians were sick or tired. Maybe there was something, maybe they just got back from a battle or something. Maybe they were super confident. You see that all the time in like football, you're like, oh, they're gonna win. This team is gonna win, and then they get like stumped by this, team like the Jaguars or something, right? We've seen that happen. And also witches. There's also a possibility for witches, and actually that is a plausible explanation. Witches. There's actually a story in your textbook about witches and about how, back during this time period, witches were a thing, and they did use them. They did try to use spells or people, wise ones or some kind of wizardry or something to predict or to change an outcome, or they look to the stars, some of these things like that, and to kind of change the outcome or get help on the outcome. So it's not completely impossible, which is actually could be a plausible explanation if you can back it up with some history. Okay, so I want you guys to be aware of that. It could still be plausible back in the time. There's a really good information about that in your textbook I read over, but I didn't put it all in here, but it's true. If you guys have ever seen Jumanji, witches are always an option. All right, so also this, make sure you write this down in your notebook too. If you're using the guided notes, you just have to fill in a little bit. So, you have to go through your explanations to figure out what's the best one. It needs to be the best explanation. So go through it really critically and carefully. Find the best explanation. So how can you do that? So one thing you can do is think about the scope and simplicity. So the scope is how much it can explain. So a couple things to think about. If Darius's army had a serious defect, like if there was something really wrong with them, they were really sick, or they had just come back from another maybe defeat, or I don't know, some kind of battle, that would not explain why Alexander the Great consistently defeated larger armies. So even if that were true, it would kind of wipe out those other possibilities, those other explanations, because Alexander the Great was not named Alexander the Great for nothing, right? So he consistently defeated larger armies. That was a thing. So it doesn't seem like it's probably something necessarily with Darius's army if this is something that Alexander does all the time. It's probably more on Alexander's side what makes him so great and not necessarily what makes Darius's army so weak, even though they were larger. And if that were the case, that would mean that if we're saying it wasn't Alexander the Great being so amazing, that would mean every single other battle he ever fought, there was some explanation why he couldn't beat those, like he could beat the larger armies. Like, oh, well, they were sick and they were tired, and there was witches to help Alexander, and there were I don't know. You know what I mean? So there'd have to be a bunch of different explanations every single time. Eventually, it's like, okay, maybe it's just him, right? Something to think about when you guys are thinking about like sports and athletes, or like maybe that athlete is just a good athlete, right? They just win a lot of times because maybe they're actually really good. And also like that. So simplicity. Maybe he was just a really good general, and that's all there is to it. He just gave good commands, like just really good teachers. There's really good athletes. There's really good, people. So that's just could be a simple reason right there. You don't have to think too much of it, but definitely think through the options. All right, and the last little point for today's lesson is just beware of pleasing theories. And this does remind me a little bit of Sargent. So I don't know if I know you guys remember this. Remember with the murder mystery, just because you want it to be true or you don't want it to be true doesn't necessarily mean you need to agree with it. If you don't want to be the murderer in the story, or you don't want this person to be the murderer, like, no, they can't be the murderer. They can't be the one who did it. Just because you don't want them to doesn't necessarily mean you need to believe it. You have to use the explanations, and you have to think critically and make sure that it's possible or plausible. Okay. All right. And this is your assignment for today. Like I say, you're just going to read this little bit. It's actually pretty interesting. And it talks about the word posh. And I was really, I feel kind of like I let you down because I was going to put my Posh Spice image up here, but I forgot. So it all talks about the vocabulary. It's not really vocabulary, but this word posh and where it came from, the origins of the name. of the word. And so there's just two questions down here at the bottom. A and B, you're going to answer both of them based on the text, okay? So here's your assignment. It says read the text, answer both questions A and B about the evidence and the explanations that are in the text. Here's the thing. It says your explanations must be supported by textual evidence only. Please work on that. Only pull evidence from what you're reading on this particular one. Yesterday, you were allowed to research if you wanted. Today, you are not. You're only using the text, okay? This is why it's important to read the directions. If you need me and you want to go over something, you're welcome to visit me today from 10 to 12 or 2 to 4. You have an assignment tomorrow to review this chapter, and also you'll have like a 10-point mastery assignment on Thursday before we leave for the long weekend. Okay, so if you guys need me, I will be available today. Make sure you are visiting me. Make sure you're telling your friends to watch the video lessons, only 10 minutes. And I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll be reaching out to you guys soon. Do your classwork and ask me for help. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. I miss you.